Hello everybody and welcome to another top 5 board gaming video. Today's topic is all about card drafting games, and more specifically games where you have some hand of cards where you're going to pick a number for yourself and then give the other cards off to your opponents for them to pick however many cards they get. The thing is that I personally prefer this type of drafting to other types of drafting where you essentially have face up cards or tiles, dice, whatever it happens to be that people are picking from, because in this case I find it to be a little bit more strategic, as well as being able to better control what your opponents get, as well as making it easier to build up a particular engine or whatever it happens to be. I just find it to be a little bit more intriguing in that case. But again, the idea of drafting is much bigger than this. So I am curious what you guys have to say. Do you guys enjoy this style of drafting where you're passing cards around and taking some number every time? Or do you prefer ones where you've got just a set number of face-up ones, and once they're gone, they're gone? I would love to hear what you guys have to say about it. Please put anything in the comments below. You guys know I love to hear it all. But that said, we're going to jump right in with my number 5. At number 5, I've got Terraforming Mars. In this game, at certain points, you're going to be drawing cards that represent bases and structures and research that you can potentially use for your corporation. And there is a drafting variant where after you draw those cards, you pick one for yourself and pass them around. After you have your little hand, you purchase some number of cards in order to keep to potentially build later on. The reason it's so low on the list is because the drafting aspect is a variant on the main game, but the thing is, after I played with it, I never want to go back. You end up with much more strategic value. You're able to really build out a particularly focused engine. In addition, you can watch what your opponents are doing and try to prevent them from getting particular cards. It just makes everything a lot more fun, a lot more strategic, and you can build up faster. Terraforming Mars, my number 5. At number 4, I've got Sushi Go. This is an adorable little game where the idea is that you're going to be building a tableau of sushi, and in order to do that, you're going to be passing cards back and forth or around the table or whatever it happens to be. The really interesting thing about this is that the different sushis have particular combinations that make them worth more or less or whatever it happens to be. You've got mechanics where you've got set collection, you have one where the highest number gets a particular amount, the lowest number loses points, all of that kind of stuff. So you're constantly having to look around to see what people are doing, where you're at, what you need, and what they need. It's lower on the list just because it's a little bit simpler in terms of how it's presented, and you literally just take a card and play it down in front of you. So it's a very simple game to get into, but it is very pure drafting at its core. Sushi Go, my number 4. At number 3, I've got Biblios. In this game, you have 2 major phases that occur. The first one is effectively a drafting phase, and the second one is an auction phase. During the drafting phase, you will essentially draw cards one at a time, and the idea is that you pick where they go. You will either get it, or your opponents have an option to take it, or it goes into the bidding pile for the next phase. I love the way that it's presented, and I love the idea that you have full control over every single card. But the thing is that you can take a good card and then the next one might be even better. So it creates that really delicate strategic balance of what do I really need, and on top of that you need to track what your opponents are also potentially getting and how they're getting them, and it just makes the game absolutely intriguing and tremendously fun. It's a little bit lower on the list because the drafting portion is literally half of the game. There's still a lot of other game going on with it, and on top of that, it's not traditional drafting in terms of you're looking at all the cards simultaneously and deciding where they all go. But it does still have that core feeling that you get with these other drafting games. Biblios, my number 3. At number 2, I've got St. Petersburg. This is probably the quintessential idea of card drafting that I personally can think of, where the idea is that you're attempting to perform engine building over the course of several rounds, and in order to do that, you need particular types of buildings, you need aristocrats, you need all these different card types, and the thing is you're constantly looking around at your opponents, seeing what they have, and all the time you're passing this mass of cards around to see what can I afford, what can I potentially get, when can I get it, all of that kind of thing. The great thing about this particular game is that in the late game especially, you tend to have an abundance of resources, but all of the cards are either gone or otherwise unavailable, whereas at the beginning you're just like, oh, I want that and that and that and that, and you can do all of this planning, but a lot of times it ends up just going to shambles and you just have to end up doing the best that you can. St. Petersburg is my number 2. At number 1, I've got Seven Wonders. Like St. Petersburg, this is probably a quintessential idea of what a card drafting game is. Again, you're doing engine building, but on top of a lot of other things, you've got set collection, you've got militaristic power between yourself and your immediate neighbors, you've got large buildings that require a lot of resources, but give you a lot of boons and all sorts of building materials and all that kind of stuff. You just have a whole bunch going on. And again, the idea is that you've got a hand of cards that you pass on and on and on, and you build what you can, and you gradually build up your empire to make it more and more powerful and build up that engine. And the thing is that you have to balance between getting victory point values and getting buildings that actually grant you resources so you can build more stuff. On top of that, the military aspect has you competing with your direct left and right, which means that you have a lot more control in terms of what cards you're going to be giving them. Do you give them a great card that you know they'll probably take so they avoid a militaristic one? Do you take the militaristic one to guarantee they don't get it? All of that kind of stuff really comes into play. And honestly, the only reason that this is number 1 over St. Petersburg is because St. Petersburg is a little bit tough to find and I just don't own it. But honestly, it would be a tie other than that. So with all that, Seven Wonders is my number 1. Well, everybody, that's going to be it for me. I hope that you enjoyed this video on my top 5 favorite card drafting games. Now, like I said, this is a very focused idea of what drafting is in terms of looking at cards, passing them on type of thing, but drafting is a huge world in the board gaming industry, and I will probably do more videos about the other different types of drafting that we have. But that said, you guys know I absolutely love to hear from you. What are your favorites in this particular category of taking and passing cards, and why? Let me know anything and everything in the comments below. And with that, if you haven't done so already, please also take a look at my various social media pages as well as my Patreon, where on all of those you can interact with myself and my channel in a bunch of really fun and cool ways. But with that, thank you very, very much, you guys, for watching. I hope that you enjoyed this video, and I will see you next time.